This video is sponsored by HMVPL, sellers of this stylish adjustable full spectrum grow light with timer. Click the link in the description box for more information. Hello and welcome to Peggy's Plants, coming to you from Central Florida. Today I'd like to share with you a video on basic plant care troubleshooting. There's a big difference between a plant that is happy and thriving and a plant that's just existing. A thriving plant should be giving you new growth on a somewhat regular basis, and it just overall looks healthy. The color is good, the leaves aren't curling, they're not yellowing. That's a thriving, happy plant. On the other hand, a plant that's not thriving tends to be droopy and just has the appearance that something is wrong. In this case, there's some basic things to consider. The first thing that I would look for is to see whether or not there's pests. This is the most obvious thing to check for, and as you can see here, this plant definitely looks unhealthy. It has spider mites. In this case, I treat my plant with insecticidal soap and keep an eye on it to make sure it didn't need further treatment. Now, if this is not the case, I've checked the plant for pests and see nothing, the next thing I would do would pop the plant out of the pot to determine the health of the roots. This plant is clearly root bound, so I need to repot it. If this plant was not root bound, I'd be checking the plant to make sure that there was no presence of root rot, and I'd also be checking for pests in the soil. If barring any of those issues, I'd next consider my soil mix. I'd need to make sure that my soil mix is well draining, and I'd also want to make sure that it is retaining enough moisture to hydrate the plant. If there does not appear to be a problem with pest, roots, or soil, I'm going to next consider my watering habits. I don't water my plants that are in soil without first resorting to this little guy, my moisture meter. I have been caring for plants for quite some time, but I still rely on a moisture meter to tell me whether my soil is wet or dry and where that water level is in the pot. So I do find this little tool to be invaluable. It's very inexpensive and I would highly recommend it to anyone. I find that my plants do best when I focus on watering consistently, meaning I have a consistent schedule for the plant, and that if I have a plant that I like to let dry out, I try to let it dry out to that same level each time that I water it, rather than sometime letting it go very dry and then other times rewatering when it's moist. Also, watering thoroughly is very important. I think that's the most important aspect of watering. For that reason, I tend to bottom water because I need to make sure that all of my plant roots are receiving water. Whereas when I top water, it's hard to tell whether or not the entire plant is being thoroughly watered. If after that my plants still look like these, they're still lackluster, not doing very well, then my problem is probably something that a lot of people tend to sleep on. You hear a lot about soil and watering and roots, but people don't talk a lot about, I find, lighting. All plants need lighting. You hear that snake plants can thrive in no light. No, snake plants can live with no light, but all plants would prefer to have sunlight. This snake plant actually gets hours of direct sunlight, and notice how all of the leaves are upright. It's thriving. This plant multiplies on a regular basis. The best lighting for plants is normally natural lighting. Plants require varying degrees of natural lighting, however. Like these plants, these are my alocasias. I find that in my home, they do best in front of this window, behind this curtain. They are getting diffused light, so they never get direct light. Because they're behind the curtain, the light is diffused. As you can see here, plants have a tendency to grow towards the lighting source. So in this situation, I'm constantly having to rotate the plant for aesthetic reasons. The plants over here tend to be my more sun-loving plants. This window does not have a curtain in front of it diffusing the light. I do have blinds so that I can adjust the amount of light that these plants get. This window gets my morning light and it gets direct sun for hours. The Florida sun can be very harsh, especially during the summer. So for some time in the summer, I do have to kind of tilt the blinds so that my plants don't burn. This Monstera deliciosa is getting indirect light from the window I just showed you. Although these plants are said to be able to live in low lighting, I did have this plant in low light early in its life, but I find that having it located here where it is getting indirect light, meaning it is some distance away from the window, but it does get bright light, I find that it is definitely thriving in this position. So even though it can do well in low light or do okay in low light, I noticed that it didn't put out nearly as many leaves. It didn't seem to be nearly as healthy. It is doing well here. My philodendron micans also, as well as this Adansonii, also get indirect lighting and do well with that. They are also plants that you may hear people say that they don't need life to thrive. I have found that for me, the indirect lighting in my home is best for these two plants as well. Recognizing that everywhere you want to put plants does not necessarily have access to natural lighting, I sometimes turn to artificial lighting. One thing I didn't realize was that just your everyday light bulbs, be they fluorescent, incandescent, whatever, they actually do offer some benefit for your plant growth. However, the benefit is minimal. So did not know that, learned that in research for this video. But I don't get into foot candles and all of that. If you've been following me for any time, you know I like to keep things pretty basic. So these lights do offer some benefit, but it is, like I said, minimal. For plants to thrive in artificial lighting, you would need full spectrum lighting, which is usually found in grow lights. I like to use these light bars. I do recognize that for many people, you don't have tons of plants. You don't have racks of plants like some of us who have kind of lost our minds in the plant world. But artificial lighting in the form of grow lights are best. You typically see grow lights in grow tents with aluminum walls because that reflects the lights on all parts of the plant. But looking at these lights, I do recognize they are not aesthetically pleasing and not necessarily something you want all over your house. I only have them in my plant room. Outside of my grow room, my favorite grow light actually comes from the sponsor of this segment, HMVPL. They make this adjustable height grow light that is so aesthetically pleasing. It's 75 inches tall, it has a timer, and it puts out a full spectrum light that helps your plant at every stage of growth. I like it because it came with only a few parts. It was easy to put together, fully adjustable. Most of all, it provides full spectrum lighting for my plants at every stage of growth so that my plants can thrive. So there you have it, the steps I take when troubleshooting issues with my plants. I check for pests, check the soil, my watering habits, as well as the lighting I'm providing. Thank you, HMVPL, for your sponsorship. And thanks to all of you for watching. Stay well, take care, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.